I love being a painter myself, but especially as a teacher, I want to model for other creatives that this is a real job and it's a really good one, especially here in the North. Well, my name is Robyn Scott. I am a mother, I'm a teacher, I'm an artist, I'm a poet, and I'm a longtime Yellowknifer. I feel so fortunate for so many reasons to live in the Northwest Territories and to be in a creative field. I feel like this is one of the few places in the country where people can live a creative life and still make a living. And so one of my greatest purposes in life, and I do believe in living a purpose-filled life, is to be able to create opportunities for others. I didn't really take myself seriously as an artist for the longest time. Art has always been part of my life. It's always been in the background of my life. But I was an English teacher, and art was just something I did for myself, quietly. And then I had a big change in my life, and I started doing art a little bit more publicly. I started sharing it with my friends and my family on social media and things like that. And people suddenly started offering me money for it. And then in 2019, I submitted on a whim one of my paintings to the Northwest Territories Northwest Telephone Book Cover Contest. And it was accepted and it won, and I couldn't believe it. And it came with a nice paycheck. I thought that was fun. I want to do that again. And so I painted another caribou, and the city of Yellowknife purchased it to be on one of their information kiosks. And I thought, that was really fun. Let's keep doing that. So I can paint people, I can paint landscapes, I just don't want to. Painting wildlife for me is fun, it is joyful. When you're walking in the woods and suddenly you encounter an animal, the world suddenly goes quiet and everything feels brighter and still and a little bit magical and sparkly. And so that's kind of what I want to capture with my wildlife paintings, is that magical moment of encounter. And so all of the colors are a little bit overly saturated, they're a little bit abstract, they're a little bit high key, and I think that sort of captures that feeling. And I've loved doing that. I don't ever plan on stopping to do that. But at the same time, I've been thinking recently about how that's not how we, in our real life, encounter animals. When I run into a fox, it's not going to be on an idyllic hill overlooking a lake, as much as I would love it to be, and that's typically what I've painted. When I see a fox, it's running behind a dumpster by the Independent. And when I see fish, it's not while I'm snorkeling underwater in crystal clear waters. It's going to be probably the sheen of their skin and the fish scales from a bucket where they're being, filleted for dinner. I think those are the moments I want to capture, because those still feel magical. Those still feel exciting, but are they as visually appealing? I don't know, but I'd like to find out and see what people think of. So that's a direction I want to move in, is creating those encountered moments, encroaching landscapes where animals and humans are encountering each other in more realistic settings. And so eagles at the dump, or foxes running by, in my backyard along the fence posts. Those are the moments I want to start to capture. We'll see how it goes. After a while, I started, especially during COVID, I had all of this time and opportunity to be able to put more time into my work. And I thought, I'd like to start taking my artwork seriously. And if I want people to take me seriously as an artist, I should start taking myself seriously as an artist. And so I started putting my work out into the world a little bit more mindfully and thoughtfully. My goal, and about 2 years ago, was to, when you think of art in the Northwest Territories, I'd like my name to be one of the ones that comes up in people's minds. And I think that it's going well, and I think that Yellowknifers have been wildly supportive in that journey, and that means a lot to me. I want every artist in the Northwest Territories to make money at art. I want there to be competition. I think there's enough room for all of us in this community, and I think that to be part of that journey, even in a little way, is so important. It's such a privilege for me. I want to tell people how they access grant money and how to make prints. And I made a lot of mistakes. I didn't really have a mentor when I was first emerging as an artist, and I'd love to be that for anybody else. I'm so grateful as an artist to have my 2 dogs because I go for a walk in the bush with them off leash for an hour every single day. And they just go off and chase their ptarmigan and have a good time, and I have room and scope for my imagination. And so I am always reaching out and touching the environment around me. My hands are moving along rocks and reaching out and touching and crushing pine cones, thinking if I was to break this down and put it into paint, what would it look like? What would it feel like? What could I combine it with? And so those moments are so special to me, and it gives me time to imagine what it would feel like to be an animal moving through these spaces. And so I keep my doggy bags with me, and I'm always just tucking things in my pocket. That dog walk every day is where those paintings come to life. One of the most common questions I get asked is, how long does it take you to do a painting? And people are always surprised when I tell them that I'm a really fast painter. And so a large scale painting might take me only 8, 10, 12 hours. What they don't see though is that I obsess about my paintings for weeks. They live in my head. I plan every brush stroke, every piece of texture, every highlight on a leaf. And so by the time that I sit down at my studio to do the painting, it's done. My hands just need to catch up with the material. It's a little frustrating sometimes when I think that I'm about to sit down and do an owl painting, for example, and then all of a sudden a raven shows up in the painting. And I'm like, well, no, I've already done a raven this month. I need to do something else, and the raven won't go away. And I'm like, okay, I guess this is gonna be a raven painting. Owl, you'll have to wait for next time. Sometimes I feel like I'm not driving the bus creatively. I have a painting that lives in my head that I am so excited about. I can see it. I don't have the skills yet to bring it to life. I'm getting better all the time. I'm a much better artist than I was 5 years ago, even last year, even last month. With every painting I grow. And so this painting I'm carrying around inside of me all of the time, waiting for that moment where I know that I can bring it to life. That's okay, it's not going anywhere. We'll find our way. I don't believe in being a singular media artist. I think that some people say, I'm an oil painter, I'm a watercolorist. I think that mixed media gives you permission to experiment and play. And so often I will spread canvases out on my living room floor, and that's why I have a multicolored carpet, is because there's paint everywhere. And I will splash down paint, and then I'll layer ink, and then I'll grind in some soft pastels, and I like to have a little bit of everything because sometimes you just can't achieve the effect that you want with a particular media. I do enjoy working on illustrations. I like doing drawings where I use ink and I use gouache, I use a little bit of watercolor, and so I don't know, I want to give myself permission to discover and play, because if I only use one material, if I only know what I'm certain will work out every single time, that's not where the little bits of surprise will happen. I don't paint for other people, ever. I rarely ever take commissions. If I do take a commission, it's because I know it's something I'd want to paint anyway. If it's something I'm not excited about doing, I know that will show in every brushstroke. And so I think that if I was to offer advice to an emerging artist, it would be paint for yourself. Don't be afraid to make ugly art. I have closets full of paintings that I'm not happy with. I learned something from every single one of them. I just don't put those on Instagram. And so I think that not being afraid to make things that are not perfect, not right, but saying, what did I learn from this? And then you can layer more paint on top of it and turn it into something new. I have so much advice for people. I really think that we need to have more conversations about what works for us, about what obstacles we're encountering, about what feelings come up when we're working, to demystify the creative process. I don't know, I feel like people think that there's some great secret, but the only secret is make art. Show up, just show up. I'm so inspired by the beauty in the everyday. A lot of my paintings that I've been doing so far, I often incorporate organic materials into my underpaintings. And so I have buckets of found materials that I just find on my dog walks. I've got lichen, I've got poplar fluff, I have a little bit of a bee's nest in there, a wasp's nest, and I like to embed those into my underpaintings. I want people to touch my paintings. I mean, you can lick a painting and it'll be fine. The idea of walking into a gallery, do not touch, is ridiculous to me. And I think that part of connecting with the landscape is the texture of this place, the feeling of lichen on rock as you're scrambling up over an edge of a rock. That's an exciting part of the moment, and I want to be sure to continue to embed those things into my work. So lichen and moss and fish scales. I was not that long ago working on a painting, and one of my students was working alongside of me, and we look out the window of my classroom and the outdoor education class is scaling fish. And I said, okay, everybody stop. We're going outside. And so we went outside, we gathered up all of the fish scales. I taught them how to rinse it and preserve it and dye them. And so we ended up using those in our artwork. That's exciting to me. Taking bits of the North and incorporating them in pictures of wildlife so we can feel better connected to the worlds that they inhabit. It's exciting for me. That's a little bit of magic. So this one here is embedded with gravel and sand and pumice stone. And so I'm building up layers and layers, and eventually the transparency of the medium will disappear and we'll be left with that behind. Oh, I'll show you another one. I'm really excited about this piece. So these are slivers of bark that I collected along with my dog walk. And so I'm embedding those into my underpaintings. I've got layers of ash and soot and gravel and grit that I walk with little baggies in my pocket of different materials. And so this will be eventually a landscape, probably for an owl, but we'll see what animal walks in. Yeah. And it's usually an animal shows up in the landscape, and then I know where we're gonna go next. And I want people to touch them. I want people to feel connected. So when there's an animal in this space, to reach out and feel like they're where that animal is. I'm really excited about that. Sometimes I am reminded of the fact that I don't have a BFA. I don't have a fine arts degree. I'm entirely self-taught, although I've done now lots of coursework in education on my own as an adult. And sometimes I feel like there's pressure to create art that fills that standard that comes with art school education. You know, having the deeper meaning, having the art that pushes boundaries. I think I'm rejecting that, despite the gatekeepers of the world suggesting that my art maybe isn't going to be taken as seriously by people like them. But I love it. And as long as I love it, I think other people will see that love and will appreciate and see what I'm doing. I also like the idea that good art doesn't have to be expensive to make. I love painting on cardboard. I work with found materials. I can turn craft paint into something special. Now that I've started to experiment a little bit more with higher end materials, I can see how those two worlds can walk together. But I want to make sure that things like finances aren't an obstacle to creating art. Some of the best paintings I've ever seen in my life were done on the insides of cereal boxes. And I think that's something a little bit special. This very large canvas that's sitting beside me is going to be a bucket of fish guts. And so I was down buying dinner at Fish on the Bay not that long ago, and there was something just about the capture of the pinks and corals of the organs and the shine of the blues, grays, and greens of the skins. And I thought, that's beautiful. And so I took a few shots, and they've just been living in my head, and I can't stop thinking about them. And so, can I make that beautiful? Can I make it a giant painting and somebody still might want to hang it on a wall somewhere? I'd like to try. And so that's what this is going to be, and I can't wait to get started on it. I don't want to take myself too seriously with my art. I think that's really important. It's part of the reason I love doing my balloon animals series. My balloon animals they started off as illustrations that were just practices for larger paintings that I was going to do. So they were small studies. And then I discovered that if I take these small studies and tie balloons to them, they're suddenly really funny. And people tend to like them and resonate with them. And they're an example of how art can be light and playful and ridiculous. And that's kind of great. I'm so grateful to my school administration for being so supportive of me walking in these two worlds. And I think that it brings something a little bit different to my students. I say to people all the time that art isn't something that lives only in galleries or museums, or it's a bowl of fruit hanging in your granny's house. Art should be a living, breathing thing out in the world. I love working on mural projects. I've got a mural coming up that I'm going to be doing for a local business. I've been painting murals with students in the schools. I think that bringing art into our community and telling our stories visually is so important. I think that Yellowknife has some beautiful examples of that. I hope that the powers that be, the money from above continues to support that, because you're right, people have a sense of pride and accomplishment in their own community, and the tourists love it. I don't think so, and I wish I had a good answer for that one. Art has always been something that brings me a sense of comfort and relief. As somebody who feels a little bit anxious or overwhelmed by the world, when I'm drawing, when I'm painting, is the moment when the world goes still and everything feels quiet and all of those anxieties slip away, and I can be very, very present in my artwork. Not that I'm being mindful necessarily, because in some ways I feel like Robyn has left the building. Robyn has gone for a walk down the street. She'll be back later. But my body, my intuition, my sense of connection between hand to page, I disappear into that. And that's such a comforting feeling, and it's always brought me comfort. I don't think I could ever imagine life without those moments. One thing that I've learned is that creativity, you can't just turn it on. Sometimes it isn't there. But on the days that I can't be creative, I can still work. And I think that showing up to work is really important. It's a gift I'm giving myself all the time. And so on those days when I can't create, when my hands just aren't doing what I want them to do, and that happens, I can chart colors, I can prep canvases, I can do sketches, I can wash my paintbrushes, I can sort paints. And even just being around my materials again gives me that time for daydreaming and thinking and planning and connecting back with that world. I really want people to know that this is a joyful, real career that you can embark on. If you love what you do, and if you are willing to show up and try, people are going to be so excited for you. And you will find a way to pay the bills. You will find a way to diversify your efforts. And it's a pretty extraordinary life if you let it grow. As a professional artist, I've also realized the importance of community. I show up to everything. I go to every art gallery opening if I can. I go to every play, every presentation, every public talk, because if I want people to show up for me, I should show up for them as well. And I think that creation of community and that support that comes from within is incredibly important and very powerful.